You're listening to The Deep End, a Penn Plastic Surgery podcast. Today, we're honored to host Dr. Margaret Rouba, Program Director of the MD Anderson Microsurgery Fellowship and this year's winner of the prestigious Best Case Award at the ASRM meeting. In this episode, Dr. Rouba shares her inspiring journey from growing up with a surgeon father to becoming a leader in reconstructive surgery and education. We discuss her path to leadership, her vision for training the next generation of microsurgeons, and how she balances a dynamic career, a family, all while advancing the field of microsurgery. This conversation is packed with valuable insights and inspiration. Let's jump in.
Well, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Super exciting. We're here with Dr. Rouba from MD Anderson. I feel like we were just chatting a little bit, and I feel like it was just yesterday that I saw you at the Pen Flap course. So thanks so much for being here tonight.
Absolutely. I'm honored.
And it's funny, as I told you, we kind of have been asking guests recently, like, who do they want to hear? And your name's popped up a few times. Um, Particularly, I think people are very interested in obviously the microsurgery fellowship, but a lot of other things that we'll discuss in this podcast. But as a brief background, we were all super inspired and moved by your presence at the flap course, but also your talk of Randy Sherman, which really touched all of our hearts. I know he was very close to you, and so I'm excited to kind of talk a little bit more about that.
Wow.
But just to give the audience a brief background, you're the new program director, effective when? When did you become the new program director?
September 1st, 2024. So I'm not even 3 months. It's brand
Wow.
new.
So
Yeah.
did your inbox like double on a daily basis, like on day one?
It did. And Matt Hanasano is such a nice guy, and he's such a legend that
Yeah.
he made it seem like, oh, it's no big deal. And I was like, you didn't tell me everything.
Yeah.
He's
He's such a nice guy, and knowing how nice he is and the brief interactions you and I have had, you're like the perfect person for the
Oh, well,
role.
thank you. Thank you.
I remember my interview there, and he was just like, we just chatted as if, he was just so nice.
Yeah.
Um,
That's real. That's who he is. There's no that's real. It's not fake. He's like the nicest guy. So
yeah. Well, I want to ask you some questions about that in a little bit, but what I'm curious about, it's funny, even before having met you in person, I kind of knew a little bit about your dad. I did general surgery,
okay.
kind of the traditional route. So tell me a little bit about like your upbringing and growing up with a dad who is a surgeon. My dad was a gynecologist, so like I guess you could consider that a surgeon, but
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about your upbringing and growing up and things like that.
Well, I think that growing up in a surgical household, you sort of start hearing about medicine and kind of the process of taking care of people really early. I think that what was neat for me in some ways was I never had any illusions about what surgery would take if you wanted to be a good surgeon and wanted to do right by your patients. I saw my father's work ethic from the time I was a baby. I mean, I think I was born, I think my mom says he was like a PGY2. Like I was born early. And it's like legendary. She says he had like a gunshot wound and like he had to take care of him in the ER and he was like, hurry up.
Oh yeah. The typical, yeah.
Yeah. But
What kind of surgeon was he again?
he's a CT, so he does PD
That's what I
heart.
thought. Okay.
Yeah, he does PD hearts. He trained in the pyramids program at Vanderbilt and then went to Stanford.
Mhm.
But he was gone a lot. So but he was a great dad. So my mom used to drop me off at the hospital when I was a teenager, and she'd be like, go talk to your father. And the
Oh,
nurses would put me in little scrubs and I would scrub in. This is like,
you'd scrub in.
Yeah, like the late 80s, 90s, right? I mean,
How old were you?
11, 12.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so he'd be like, hold this or suction that. And then as I got older, he'd be like, put in this chest tube or
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
he got to a point where he's like, okay, put in the aortic catheter. And that was a mess. And so it was
Yeah,
always
yeah.
like, but it was a really unusual, I think, probably upbringing. I have three siblings and none of them wanted to do it. It was definitely
Yeah,
like,
that's what I was gonna ask. Yeah.
yeah.
What
So
did
I
they
have
go into?
my oldest sister is a CRNA.
Hmm.
My next oldest sister is a stay-at-home mom of four. And
Hmm.
then my baby brother, he's not really a baby, but my baby brother is in real estate. So,
Yeah.
um, but it was always sort of, we always knew dad worked really hard and he really cared about his patients, especially the babies. And it was his passion. So there was no delusion what it would take to be a doctor. So,
Yeah. That's such an interesting story, and it shows you how like how times were back then, that you can just show up,
yeah,
scrub, no questions asked.
yeah.
Um, Now you need like a badge just to get through the door.
Mhm.
But what an incredible experience. So did he ever, clearly he had this impact on you to become a physician, but in terms of this specialty, did you just know you had to do surgery at that point?
Actually, no, he was a pretty smart
Mhm.
dad. I was his youngest daughter, so I was pretty feisty.
Mhm.
So he had to work really hard not to say too much. Um,
Mhm.
so I bounced around a lot of careers before surgery, but I did med school at USC, and USC had an incredible trauma program. And so when I was on rotation, we did a lot on the trauma service. And so I fell in love with it. I fell in love with surgery. And then I guess I had a natural aptitude for it. And so, yeah, I mean, I love surgery. It's fun.
Yeah. And growing up, like outside of, shadowing your dad and things like that, what were the other fun things you did, like outside of school?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was a Southern California baby. So I grew up playing every sport and every water sport. I surfed, I
Oh,
went to the
wow. That's
beach,
awesome.
I skated, I ran. I was a very busy child, my mom says. So I just was constantly in motion.
Oh,
So
that's so cool.
yeah.
And then once you got to USC, what do you think was the most memorable part of your training there?
Um, so because I grew up around that area, I started candy striping, which was like the volunteering when I
Yeah.
was 13 and 14. And it was at the old county. And it was amazing to see those old trauma bays and the old jail wards and the old burn units and just the way
Mhm.
people did medicine with like really not a lot of resources. Um, and then as I became a medical student and trainee, we moved to the new fancy big county that's there now.
Mhm.
But it was still, some of the rate limiting resources and stuff, but just being in that environment to train in a city like LA with these just like incredible surgeons around you that at the time you don't even realize what a big deal they are. I mean, I grew up with Randy Sherman as like
I know.
is seeing him at like dinners and I didn't realize like he's a big deal. And so it was just really I don't think I knew how much I was getting just by being there. Um,
Yeah. How did you get to know Randy Sherman? Just through being the LA USC crew?
yeah, I think at one point when I was in the teenage years, I cut my hand open and Randy made one of the residents sew it up. My dad called
Oh,
someone, and then I was doing a year of trauma research because I thought I was going to be a trauma surgeon.
mhm.
And the
I'm
trauma,
glad you didn't choose to be a trauma surgeon. I'm sure your
but
kids are happy.
yeah, they kept at the time Randy was chief, and the trauma surgeons were like, just call Randy. He'll figure it out. Just call Randy. He'll figure it out. And I only knew Randy sort of as like a plastic surgeon. I didn't really understand what he did. And then I said, why do you keep calling him? And they said, because he can fix anything that walks in this door, he can fix.
Mhm.
And it really changed my view on plastic surgery, because I was like, like some of the coolest surgeons in the hospital call that guy. And it was like,
I know.
yeah. And so I was like, okay. So then I started asking to shadow, and he was like, yeah, okay, come tag along, see what you see. And I just got to know him sort of in a professional sense outside of just, meeting him as a, you know, casually. So
Yeah, it's funny. Every time he gave a talk at the flap course, and when I watched him dissect, like, it was just like so inspiring. Just watching him.
yeah.
We really lost somebody truly, truly special in the field.
Yeah.
But I could see like between him and just being where you were, just how easy it would be to fall in love with plastic surgery.
Oh,
It just
yeah.
seems like the perfect spot.
Well, and Randy had this gravitas. He's kind of
Mhm.
like, if you listen to him talk, he made everything exciting and fun and engaging, and he could talk to the wall. He could talk to any service. And I think I said in my talk, he was really the one that said, if you're going to be a plastic surgeon, you got to learn to speak their language. So meaning
Yeah.
the other services and what they want from you. And I think he had an insight that was special. So I got super lucky.
Yeah, I've never taken a lot of pictures of talks, but when you gave that talk, I had like my phone ready and I was like taking pictures of the things you were saying. It was really cool.
Thanks.
Um, and now I think I remember interviewing with you when I was at MD Anderson, when I was interviewing for the MD Anderson Fellowship. And you mention that when you were in fellowship, your family was actually still in LA?
Yeah,
So
so
how'd you do that?
it was crazy. So when I matched for when I interviewed for fellowship, I was like 6 weeks postpartum, and it was like
Hmm.
I knew MD Anderson was great. And it was the only fellowship that I was like, okay, I'll leave LA and my family if I can get into that fellowship. I
Absolutely, yeah.
I got it, and but I was a resident. My husband, we had a new baby, and we were strapped for cash. So my husband stayed in LA and kept his job so that the nanny and I could come to MD
Mhm.
Anderson and do the fellowship. So basically, he paid the bills, and then whatever I made as a fellow paid the nanny to like, and then my husband would commute on the weekends. And then,
And you had one kid at the time?
yeah, I had a
Yeah.
1 year old. And
Hmm.
then when I decided to stay, he was like, "Are you kidding?" Like, like I kept my job. I commuted for a year because you said you were coming back, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Ooh."
Well, hopefully you also included the part where like, yes, I'm staying, but hopefully you'll come with me or something like
Yes,
that.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an important point. Yeah, I was like, I hope we can make this. And he's like, yes, of course we'll make it work. I have a great husband. Anyone that meets my husband knows he's like the nicest guy in the world.
Yeah.
Um, you have to be if you're married to us, right? Like if
Yeah,
you
you
marry,
really do. What
yeah.
does he do?
He is an engineer.
Yeah.
So he's very logical, and he's just, doesn't get flustered. So
Yeah.
it's a nice blend.
It's funny because I remember certain things and I don't know why they stick with me, but when you and I were talking during the fellowship interview, I thought about long distance relationships and I thought about how they can be like I always envisioned them to be very, 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 very tough.
Yeah.
But my wife and I, when we first started dating, we were in a long distance relationship. I was in Bethesda, she was in Philly.
Yeah.
And I realized when it's with the right person, it can be very easy. Very,
Yeah.
very easy. You know, I'm
Yeah.
sure yours was still tough, but
It wasn't tough because of him. It was tough because we wanted to be together. But I mean,
yeah.
and I wanted, my son to be, but at the same time, I think that this career, it was like, I knew it was a chunk of time. And like, if we could make this work for a chunk of time, we would be great. And so, and then when he came to Texas, he was like, all right, listen, like, because he went to work right out of college, right? So he's like, we've
Hmm.
made it through med school, we've made it through residency, we've made it through your training. He's like, it's my turn to go back to school. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay. So
Yeah.
he went back and got his MBA, and I went to work. So we've done this sort of
Yeah.
flip-flopping. So it's worked.
It's we owe so much to our significant others. I feel like we just need to throw one huge party for like all of them.
I know.
We really do. It's crazy.
I know.
Um, and did you ever see yourself staying at MD Anderson or being there and then eventually at some point doing the program director role? Did you ever see that at any point?
I mean, I maybe dreamed it. I
Yeah.
mean, I
So you wanted to do academics in some sort.
yeah, no, I definitely wanted to do academics. I didn't quite know how I was going to achieve it. I will say that um, it's really important. One of the things I wanted to do as a program director, and because I had such great support from people like Matt Hanasano and Ron Yu and everyone that's been here, is that I actually flourished as a mom and a surgeon and a wife in an academic setting because I had a big team. And I don't know about you, but like obviously I grew up playing a ton of sports. I like being on a
Yeah.
team.
Yeah.
And so I think historically sometimes people are told that academics is not the right setting, but for
Mhm.
me it was really it was the right setting, and
Yeah.
really has turned into a great thing for me.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like just today, I was operating with residents. And I'm so thankful for them rounding, taking excellent care of patients, but also their help in the OR. Sometimes I'm doing these cases, and today, for instance, I was doing one case. I had a senior resident and a junior resident, and I couldn't imagine, trying to not do it without them. And just the morale being around them and the excitement that they get when things go, it's a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. I mean, I had great mentors. I got really lucky. I had great mentors. I mean, once in a while you'll meet a pickle, but overall I had great training and great mentors. And so, I think you just have to pay it forward. And
Yeah.
I think that can look like anything you want it to look like, but I enjoy it. And I also enjoy just like I just finished clinic and I've got four of my co-faculty, in other halls. So when something comes in where I'm still like, oh my gosh, like I'll just walk to the other hall and be like, hey, what would you do with this? And
That's nice.
yeah,
And not only are they other faculty, they're like MD Anderson faculty. That's like real time.
yeah, but they're also just
They're,
like solid people too. They're just
yeah,
like,
yeah.
and so it's fun. And I think the same thing happens, at a lot of really good places. And so, yeah, I sort of,
It's the best. It's the when you work
yeah,
with people that you like I call probably like at least a faculty member a week, just even sometimes just to chat here at Penn. That's when you really know you're in a good place.
right, right.
you know. Um, so when you were in fellowship, you had the baby with you? Like the baby
Mm-hmm.
was, oh, okay. And your nanny was here kind of
Mm-hmm.
helping. And so it was just you three.
It was just the three of us in a little
Wow.
apartment, and then my husband would come on the weekends. And then same thing with her. She had come from LA, and I said, "What if we don't go back to LA?" And she ended up staying with us for a decade.
Oh, is she still with you?
She just transitioned
Uh,
because the boys got a little bit older, and she really likes being with babies. But we still see her. But I mean, she was with
yeah.
us for a decade. She was a live-in for a decade, and um, she was amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
so but everything was a partnership to make this
Yeah.
work, right? So, but
Um,
it's really fun.
when you were a fellow, Hana Sono is like the program director of program directors. Like, I think everyone who thinks of somebody who's just such a good program director, they think of him. I think the same of Evan Matros in my fellowship.
Yeah.
Um, when you got the new role as the program director, how did it feel to know that you were following him? I'm sure it's extremely exciting, but also,
Terrifying.
yeah, exactly.
I'm like, oh gosh, could there be bigger shoes? Yeah, I mean, humongous shoes to fill. But of
Mm,
course, he was like so gracious about it. I think what was so great is that good mentors never close the door. So I still call him all the time. And I ask him, how would you handle this? And he'll give me advice, but then he also encourages to do it my way or like with my way incorporated. And so that's just what makes him still so great because he's still helping run the fellowship in a sense that he's still mentoring me as I run it.
That's
And
nice.
yeah, and so, there's so many things where I'll call him and I was like, Matt, what about this? He's like, it'll be fine. And he's such a,
Yeah.
like, if you know him and you've ever operated with him, he's just like, it'll work out. Like, we'll
Yeah.
be okay. And you're like, okay.
That sounds a lot like Sir Letty. A lot like
Yeah.
Sir Letty.
Yeah. You're just like, I hope you're right. So, yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And then, Jessie Yu, who's one of our junior faculty, she's helping
Yeah.
me. So it's just a good group. Just a good group.
Yeah. So how do you juggle everything? Like how do you like on a almost like a daily basis, like the program director role, being a mom, these complex cases, it's how do you do it all? Like what do you find time for hobbies or what kind of keeps you at peace?
Yeah, I mean, I learned a long time ago that I don't like to delegate, but I do
You
better when
have
I
to.
delegate.
Yeah.
And I think that's really hard for all of us if we're very honest with ourselves. None of us really like to give up control. Um, but I definitely have learned to relinquish things to other people, and it actually makes me better. So I learned a long time ago that I wasn't going to be PTO president at my son's school, but I sew up kids' faces for some of the moms when they get hit with a baseball. So it's like a give and take. And then
Yeah, yeah.
I have a tremendous PA, Colby, who helps me, and I've had great PAs over the years, and I have great staff, and I have a great husband. So I try to I think the biggest thing is I try to delegate, and then I try to say thank you. And
Yeah.
and then sometimes I fail. Sometimes I don't
Mhm.
keep all the balls in the air. And I just have to remember to take a breath and keep moving. I think we're our harshest critics, right?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
I think watching, everyone always talks about my dad, but actually the one that kept us afloat was my mom. Because my mom was like a stay-at-home mom and constantly doing everything, and she could
Same
multitask
here.
like nobody's business. And my dad would be gone for days just operating, with those old PD heart cases. And um, now that I turned into a mom, I'm like mind blown.
Hmm.
I don't know how you did all of it, right? So
Yeah.
I think I learned to multitask from her.
Yeah, I know it's my mom's the same way. My dad was, gynecologist, always at work. My mom was stay-at-home mom, 4 kids. And now that whenever I'm left alone with my kids, I have 3 daughters, it is like the craziest work day I think I've ever. It's like thank God for my wife, honestly. And
Yeah.
I don't know how you guys are able to juggle it all and it's super impressive. But I agree. I mean, watching your mom as you grow up is as important as your dad's influence, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. But I also think that we're at a unique time. I give a talk to the fellows about, I don't know if it's wellness, I don't know what you want to call it, but I also learned when I was picking a partner, like I was very honest with who I was. And I was
Yeah.
like, it's really going to have to be 50-50 in a lot of areas because surgery is a really selfish career. Um,
Yeah. It really
and
is.
I picked a
Especially
partner.
our specialty. Well,
Yeah.
microsurgery, you know?
Yeah. And I picked a partner who really wasn't like threatened by that and very independent and very kind of, you know, so I think it was also like finding a partner who's very, I mean, he'll drive carpool. He did diapers. I mean, and then I did carpool. I mean, we're very like there's no like traditional roles. Like we all
Oh,
just
of course. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm sure you're the same. It's like whoever gets to it first.
Yeah. It's
And then-
teamwork. It's just like
yeah,
team. You have
yeah,
to.
yeah. So our life is sort of a constant game of whack-a-mole, like just trying to put out fires as
Oh
as
my
they
God, I
go.
know. And it's like it brings you joy when you can like cover for your, significant other,
Yeah,
when you're like, I got this, do your thing, and
yeah,
vice versa. It's just like it's teamwork. It's awesome,
yeah, yeah,
you know.
absolutely.
So I can admit this, but it's funny. Whenever I'm watching a movie with my wife, like I tend to be the more emotional person. But I can say that your best case, best save presentation, like if I were to watch that, I can't watch it ever again, FYI, because it was like heartbreaking. I mean, it was amazing what you're able to do, but it must have been so powerful to take care of that pediatric patient on so many levels.
Yeah, it was. And you know who I called? I called my dad.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
but you know what's crazy is that I literally got a text like 2 days ago. He turned 2. He's like
Hmm.
running. He learned to walk. He's running. Um, you know, his parents dressed him as Captain Hook for Christmas. I was like, really?
That's
Christmas
amazing.
or for Halloween.
Yeah, yeah.
But you learn a lot about, I think, uh, the parents, and
He's
then
2 now?
he's 2,
That's
and
awesome.
he's just like motoring, and
Mhm.
it was really special to watch the family handle it, and then to try to just be, you know, to push what my training could teach me I could do and not do. And I'm sure, you know, hopefully he's met like the survival statistics. They gave him, you know, if you could get through the first year, et cetera. Now we just have to figure out as he grows how he'll grow into that little body and what we'll do. But yeah, I cried a lot with that case.
Yeah,
I mean, I would like hold it together in front of the family, and then I'd go cry in a corner. And the nurses would
yeah.
be like, "They're there."
And then just it's funny because sometimes like I learn so much by just watching those parents. Like they're just so I obviously have no clue anything about his parents, but from what you're saying, it's like it's so motivating and inspiring to watch how they are, how they treat their kid, and try to myself be a better parent
I know.
on so many levels, you know?
Yeah, I do. And it's the privilege, I think, where you realize like this is your calling. This is what you're meant to do. If you can like look at that situation and be like, I can learn something from this, and it's an honor to take care of
Yeah.
them. Um, I think medicine is so hard nowadays because there's so many things that are just not great with things that are happening with insurance or with other, you know, access to
Hmm.
care issues. But at the end of the day, like an opportunity to help like that is really rewarding. And so I
Hmm.
try to just like focus on that and just remind myself like it was a really special moment. And
Yeah. So what advice did your dad give you?
well, you have to remember he's like a CT surgeon. So I think his
Yeah.
first advice was like, don't kill the kid. And I was like,
Yeah,
thanks,
yeah.
that's real helpful. And then he's like, no, seriously, like you got to remember we got an open chest. We've got lung mechanics. We've got great vessels. We've got just kind of going through the things like the sheer blood loss. Like he's like, you can't lose more than, you know, 300 cc's. I mean, you got to think of the blood
Hmm.
volume of that kid. And it's just like things I like as plastic surgeons, we know, but we don't
Hmm.
think about. And so, yeah. And then he was like, you can do it. Like, just get in there and do it.
Yeah. And
And
you had
like,
and you showed a slide, I think, with the people you called to help you.
yeah,
Yeah. Which
yeah,
is pretty impressive.
yeah, I have no pride.
Yeah.
I'll call anyone and say,
No, but it takes us but it's a team effort as well, but it's no, that's great. That's really, really cool. And to know that I was talking to Scott Levin actually on a podcast last week, and he was talking about his bilateral upper extremity transplant and that pediatric patient Zion,
yeah,
um, and how his most recent follow-up was Zion driving, and ordering at McDonald's,
yeah,
which is it's cool to follow them along. It makes it so much more special what you did in surgery.
yeah. I mean, his mom will send me movies, and he literally is like running and like just eats it and like
Yeah.
right on the flap, and then he pops up and runs, and you're like, okay, I guess we're okay.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like,
It's kids. I don't.
yeah, it's
It's amazing how they do well.
yeah. I mean, he truly has pushed me to be a better surgeon and sort of think about the way I do these cases, and really one of the things I called obviously Scott Levin and asked him a lot just about the mechanics and the orthopedics of it, and because you got to think about growth. Like these are things that sometimes we forget
Hmm.
in adults. So
Yeah. So what's your practice? I know you do a lot of extremity stuff now, right? What's your practice? What's kind of the breakdown?
I probably do 30% extremity,
Hmm.
because I mean, I do mostly sarcoma, which is pretty rare, but it's still 30%, which is pretty good. Probably do 30% breast. I still do some head and neck and some pelvis. Um, so I have a really broad practice, but extremity is my love. So
Yeah. So, and there's enough business in extremity, it sounds like. Do you have an busy ortho-onc service?
we do. So we have a really busy ortho-onc service, and I think they see like a huge amount of the sarcoma in the United States. So we do a lot of limb salvage, but then for those we can't, obviously we do the nerves and the amputation and all that. Um, but we just have a really nice ortho-onc service. And
Hmm.
they are very quick to call us for help, which is really nice.
Do you find that a lot of those patients are needing free flaps? Like,
Um,
is that what your practice entails?
yeah, I mean, but I
Yeah.
also have a lot of patients now that I've been here almost a decade, that I've done something local and they're on their
Hmm.
like third or fourth recurrence. And now it's like escalating, right? So
Yeah.
now when I do some of these cases, I think about that, like, okay, if they recur, what have I left? And like, what are my
Hmm.
bailouts? And so it's getting sort of into this realm of like fourth generation extremity
Yeah.
salvage. Like, what am I doing?
The
So,
typical, I feel like that's the MD Anderson patient almost, or the experience you get when you've worked there for so long.
well, I think it's fun for the fellows because they're always like,
Hmm.
they come up with these plans or they ask you the plan and you're like, we'll see
Yeah,
what's
yeah,
in there. We'll see what's left. We can fix
yeah.
it, but
But
have
the
A, B, and C and D ready. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then the breakdown that you said of your clinical practice, that's definitely not like the practice somebody would choose if they want a good lifestyle. It's not. So
Yeah.
which is kudos to you. I mean, but if you have an efficient team, you can still do it. Like I have a very general recon practice, too. And if you have a good team and good institution and it's efficient and stuff, you can still get it done and do other things.
Well, I think that's why I love my job here is I am in a very privileged space and that our referring surgeons are really kind
Hmm.
and in general, I mean, there's always the one off, but in general, really respectful of our time. So, I don't mind doing the general recon practice because they do try to get us in early and they try to make it as efficient as the disease allows.
Hmm.
Um, but I think I think I'm always kind of moving and I like having a little bit of a more broad-based practice, um, because I like it
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thinking back now that I guess now reflecting back since you said you've been there for 10 years and even looking back at training, your upbringing, is there anything that you regret in your life that you could say, like, if I were to go back, I would have done this differently?
Um,
If you have to think about it, probably not.
Probably not. I mean, sometimes I always toy with the idea of going back and doing like another fellowship, but then my husband looks at me like he's going to murder me. So,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, don't please don't do that.
yeah, he's like,
What
no.
fellowship would you have done? Hand?
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
really torn between micro,
Ah,
but
yeah.
at this point, he's like, no. And
Did
so,
you think about the Bunky Fellowship at all?
yeah, I did. I think I'm still one of those people that I like, I don't think I snoop, but I like go into other people's ORs because here it's like culturally it's acceptable to like just go in and hang out with your friends and see what they're doing.
Yeah,
And so I'm
that's great.
constantly seeing other people's cases. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Like, and so you get a little like, it's fun to kind of think about everything that's going on, right?
Yeah. Well, it's never too late. Lisa Wu she did a fellowship while being an attending. I don't know how she did it, but she did a breast oncology
I know.
fellowship.
I know. My husband would divorce me, like flat out. He would divorce me. I no.
We actually won't even let him listen to this podcast. We'll
No,
just
yeah, yeah. He will like be like, that guy
yeah, yeah, exactly.
needs to stop
Um,
asking questions.
and then like when you're going like on a daily basis, I'm so interested in this because of I have three sisters, three daughters. There's like a lot of women in my life that I have so much respect for that are moms, but also have very busy jobs. So do you tell yourself like, oh, my goal is to make it home for dinner every night with the family, or at least one night a week, or weekends, I'm just off work. I'm putting my phone away. Like, how do you make time for your family?
Um, I think I had to learn that I had to be very honest. Like if I knew a day was coming up that was going to be awful and I was going to be there till all hours of the night, I was straight up with my kids. I was like, today is not the day that you're going to see me. But I definitely try to get home,
How
several
many
nights,
kids do you have?
two
Two.
boys.
Yeah.
Um, and then, I tried to do the whole like work at home thing, but my boys don't get it. They think when
Yeah.
I'm home. And if I'm not paying attention to them, I like it's chaos. So if I go to work, I'll lock myself in the office for 3 hours, crank out something, and then go home because
You're right. It's so
I
much more
can't.
efficient. Yeah.
Well, my husband works from home for what he does, and they just know like when dad's in his office, dad's working. But somehow if I'm in like in the office, they're like, no, it's a free for all, mom's home. So it's
Moms are very special. Very special.
yeah, you can't.
It's
And
so true.
yeah. And then, before COVID, one of the things that I think my parents did right is they didn't make my dad's job seem like untouchable because I think kids
Mhm.
get jealous when their parents are always at the job. They wonder like, well, why don't they want to be home with me? Why are they at the job? So a couple times I brought my boys in prior to COVID and all the rules. And I walked them around I sat them with the nurses station or the iPads, or I brought them to work. And they very quickly learned like, I don't want to do that. And so
Yeah.
they learned like work is not this like super secret place I go to like have fun without them, you know? So
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny. I joke about this with with my wife all the time that it's funny how the kids just like attack her, and I could be standing there and totally free to help out, but they want mom. There's like something about it.
yeah, I mean, my two boys are my whole world. I mean, I technically say I have three because
How old are they?
they're 11 and 7 now.
Yeah.
Um, but I know they're moving to that stage where I'm not going to be cool anymore. But
Well,
right
hopefully not. Maybe not.
right now I'm still the princess in the house because it's just my husband and the two boys. So
Yeah. Well,
I'm
maybe
gonna
they'll
ride
think
that for as long as I can.
they might think that the surgeon program director thing is cool. You never know.
Maybe
You're
one
not
day.
just, yeah, you're a special mom. They're gonna think you're cool for a little while.
Oh, thanks.
Um, how much sleep do you get? What's like you said you play a lot of sports in growing up. Do
Hmm.
you still find time to like work out and stuff like that?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
do you do?
So I learned a long time ago to do Pilates for my neck and my
Mhm.
core because I have a
Does it
terrible knee.
help?
Yeah, it does.
Does your neck hurt?
No,
Oh, good.
but I learned to do it because I was hurting all the time. And then I still run, so I'll jog. But
Mhm.
now I do a lot of like sports with my boys.
Yeah,
Like
I know.
I'm on the baseball field or the football field or we're doing lacrosse next season. So I try to be sporty with them and get
Mhm.
out there and play. And I think you have to, right? You have to have some kind of balance because definitely the OR is exhausting. And so getting out that with them is fun.
What was your favorite sport growing up?
Probably soccer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my
But I
girls
wasn't as
love
good
it.
as I was a better swimmer, but soccer was my favorite. So
Yeah, it is funny though playing these sports with your kids or running around on the weekends. It's exhausting. Um,
yeah.
but um, one thing we always ask every other guest just to see what they say is, what's your favorite surgical instrument and why?
Oh, the long dilator, of course. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Why you?
It's
Why
like
is that?
my universal micro instrument. I can do anything with a long dilator. And it's just like it's like I don't know, it's like my safety blanket. Like if I have the long dilator in my hand, I can do something. I don't and it's always in my right hand. I'm so right-handed. So, I can have
It-
anything in my left, but
Yeah, it's funny when you're interviewing a microsurgeon for this podcast, like they all say like the same two or three instruments,
I
whereas
just
like all the
yeah.
other specialties say something completely different.
Yeah, no, that's my like safety blanket. And the scrub techs have even gotten to this point where they just hand it to me because I think they think it'll like calm me down. And I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like, take your dilator and
Oh. And if you didn't do plastic surgery, what would you do?
um I would probably do something artsy like interior design or
Yes.
I love imagining decorating homes or I
Yes,
don't
me
know.
too.
Yeah, and so if I had all the money in the world to just go around decorating homes, that's what I would do.
Wouldn't that be great?
I know, it'd make things pretty.
I,
And
s- I, s- I still sometimes hope that like HGTV is just going to knock on my door one day.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, it's kind of an odd thing that I do. And I find I just like sometimes at night when I'm just like zoning out and it's been like a hectic day, I'll just go on like my Pinterest and just kind of browse. And my husband will be like, what are we buying now?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like, I'm like, nothing yet. Uh,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I think that all of us in plastics probably have a little bit of an artsy side.
Hmm.
And so I think it sort of comes out one way or another.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for chatting tonight. I think I'll say what most people have said when we wanted to kind of bring you on board for this is that you're already inspiring people by obviously all these different roles that you play, and perhaps the most important role is being a mom and juggling everything else. So kudos to you. I don't know how you do it, but and you're just such a cool person. That's
Oh, thank
like,
you. Thank
no,
you.
honestly. So thanks for taking the time. I know you're very busy.
Oh, no.
But this was a lot of fun. I learned a lot
Yeah, we
and
should
this
do it
is great.
again.
No, definitely. We might.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good.
All right. Thanks so much.